DPA and a bunch of junk.
No, yeah.
I got 5 junks.
Has anybody got it yet?
I'm sure.
What's that?
Has anybody gotten an alert yet?
I don't know.
I have this.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. I got mine, and if I'm the only one.
You're top of the list.
I didn't design it that way. If I did it on accident. My batting average on the computer says about 200. Oh, well.
Right after the school canceled, my son immediately texted me that, let me know.
Is it canceled for tomorrow? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, DMAC, I couldn't believe that they canceled already tomorrow. We haven't even seen snow yet.
They're one of the first dominoes to fall.
I know. But then the other day when we had all that ice, oh, we couldn't have a delay. That would be unheard of to do something that's in the safety of people.
Yeah. Well, that's fun.
Now, those of you in the back, can you see this okay, or do I need to make it larger?
Oh, yeah.
No, do you?
It's fine, I can
do
see
you-
it.
can
It's
you
good.
zoom in on it?
It's good. Need bigger TVs, I think.
You hear me?
So then they can hear me.
I think it should. I agree.
You see the mic pick up, like, do you want us to check our mics for distance? Or does it show you like a audio pickup?
No, it doesn't. I just noticed, like I said, I watched 2 weeks ago.
And you had it on mute.
Are you? I did not-
I am.
Is that right? My name is Martin Heron.
Okay.
So I was gonna connect with you eventually, because we'll go for another burner.
Okay.
Out on $1,000 drive, so.
Yeah,
I've
no.
got the third that's like.
Can I
written
hook mine?
But-
Yeah, just hook mine.
Yeah. But that would be great. We've got.
Really?
Yeah, it's gonna help with the burn too. I have like the yellow fire stuff and.
As long as we're clear on exactly what you want to do.
Yep, and I'll prep it ahead of time and put the fire and stuff and
Welcome.
all of that stuff. Well, we got fire. So I'm very excited. We've had. I've seen a ball.
Oh, why couldn't we
A lot of red tape. So, I mean, I think rapid control is on its way.
Good. All right, yeah.
Yeah, I'll check in.
Luckily for you.
That's the whole, yeah, that's the whole thing. I always study that. I can I just find it very.
It's gonna take a few years.
That maybe use some private citizen who may not do another private citizen. Probably just that's a lot.
Didn't ask what yours is.
I think so in the last thing.
Call later that night. Yeah. Well, maybe we want your firefighter. Ask around. I didn't see.
You guys know.
Oh, it's just important for me to know.
It's a tickle. You squeeze it.
Had to go one way.
That's
How
a
are you
hopeful,
guys tonight?
good, that's a hopeful shirt.
I was gonna say, you got the Hawaii gig on it, that's really optimistic. I wear a Hawaiian shirt every day. I know. That's just right, it's awesome. I'm just a sunny guy. We need that on there. I am going scuba diving for spring
I
break.
know, you were planning on a trip.
I was gonna go down south. Well, he just went to Colorado. So, I found it in Colorado. Climbing the shark. Yeah, I dive for 45 minutes in the shark. Sharks are moving out of here. They're moving. Remember the shark thing? Man, you gotta sign like this. They say, "Turn your leg off." That'd just be something. Yeah. That's why my wife and daughter can enjoy the aquarium, just like, yes, swimming from the sharks. She'll be out there with the insurance in hand. That sounds like it's a couple days out there though.
Good evening. The time is 6 p.m. I'll call to order the Tuesday, February 11th meeting of the Huxley City Council. Roll call, please.
Roberts. Here. Etcher.
Here.
Rigler.
Here.
Mulder. Murphy.
Here.
Let the record show that Mulder is absent.
Thank you. Item number 2 this evening, I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Give you a motion.
Motion by
second.
Rigler, second by Ms. Roberts. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now is the time in the agenda for public comment. Anybody from the public wishing to speak tonight is certainly more than welcome to. I just ask that you come to the podium, start with your name and address, and limit your time to 5 minutes. Anybody wishing to speak this evening? Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, there it goes. Chris Gardner, two things. One, was that 2 weeks ago we had the presentation with the firefighters and the police? Or is that 4 weeks? Doesn't really matter, wherever it was, I just want to say that was really cool. So, one, good job, that was neat. Two, I wanted to see if I can request council to put on a work session item to revisit my plaza TIF agreement. There was, when it was put in place, everything was good, but there was an inadvertent mistake on the lots there's actually 2 lots at the plaza and only one of them got added to the thing. So now that it's never paid out and it will never pay out unless that gets fixed. And so I just want to put that as an action item because it matters. So I just want to throw it out there. That's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Chris. As you know, this isn't a question and answer kind of response time for council, but I'll certainly talk to the council members this week. And if there's a desire to move that forward to a work session, we will do so. Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak this evening? Seeing no one rise, we will move on. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Any items anybody wishes to pull? So need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll give you a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion by Ms. Roberts.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Murphy. Any comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
I was just going to note, as you recall, at the last meeting, we had just the rate study for the wastewater, and that had been proposed. I think it was around 6,000. There was some cost savings by doing both, and that's why you've got the proposal to look at both the water and the wastewater rates with Northland Securities, and we'll get some new rates set. So thank you.
Thanks, sir. Roll call, please.
Rigler,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Roberts. Yes.
All right, item 5A this evening is resolution 25008, accepting final platted easements and irrevocable letter of credit for Anthem Plat 3. Need a motion on this?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Etcher.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rigler.
Yeah, before you this evening, you've got Final Plat 3. This is a little bit of replat from Final Plat 2. What Final Plat 3 does is it took Lot 5 in Anthem Final Plat 2, converted that into lots 1, 2, and 3, which are for the 3 commercial strip centers that will be built out at Anthem. And Lot 8, which was on the south side of Lot 5, was where the proposed Republic Apartments are going to go. And that's been divided up into lots, I believe, 4, 5, and 6 are the lots there. There are some additional public improvements that are going to have to go in. With this plat, P&Z did approve it subject to, and within the resolution, you will note that, let me get to it real quick. There'll be an irrevocable letter of credit for $412,506 that will need to come to the city prior to this plat being filed. You will accept the public easements. There will be no certificates of occupancy issued until the roundabout on Highway 69, street light, sanitary sewer from East First and Fourth are installed and accepted by the city. We did note in the previous one on Anthem 2 that the developer association and or abutting property owner shall be required to maintain the public right of way along Plat 1 and 2. We added Anthem Plat 3 to this one. And also the final plat will not be released for recording until all the engineered costs associated with the review of Anthem final plat 3 are paid or deposited with the city in escrow. So be happy to answer any questions you may have.
As part of that, Dave, you listed that until the roundabout on 69 is installed, no COs. That would include temporary certificate of occupancies as well, presumably. I assume COs is encompassing, but
I would assume so. I mean, it says no occupancy
Yep,
until,
thank
and that does include that sanitary sewer upsizing from First to Fourth as well. So.
thank you for the clarification. Any other questions or discussion on this? Okay. I've got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Murphy,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Item 5B this evening is Resolution 25009 approving the Anthem main site plan. Need a motion on this?
I'll make a motion.
Give you a second.
Motion by Etcher, second by Roberts. Dave?
Anthem main site plan was approved by planning and zoning at their meeting on the 20th. One thing that came out of that is the plan at that time was showing just an 8-foot trail along the south side of Anthem. Chris did agree to the 10-foot trail, which was showing in our kind of a comp plan update in our master trails plan. So you'll see that the 10-foot trail on the south side is required. And I think the only other thing that is needed at this point is the photometric lighting plan. If you read the minutes, there was something, I believe, related to the traffic study, but that was provided to Forrest, and Forrest did sign off on that at the P and Z meeting. You've got kind of a look. This will be the first commercial first strip center, which is a restaurant, event center, and I believe a coffee house, which will be on that lot 1 in final plat 3. So Chris, I know, is working on bringing the second structure probably to P and Z shortly, and hopes to have the middle one filled by summer and back to P and Z for council approval as well. So.
Okay, any questions or comments by council? Hearing none, I've got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Etcher,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Thank you. Item 5C this evening is Resolution 25010 approving the project service agreement for the Public Works Facility Project. Need
So
a-
I have a point of order.
Yes, ma'am.
question. Do I bring this motion forward for discussion, and then if I want to ask to be tabled in that order, do I ask for it to be tabled? And you can still have a discussion? I'm gonna make a motion to table this for now.
Okay, I have a motion to table by Ms. Roberts. I assume the table would be for 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks. Yeah.
Table till the
And
20.
it's not,
That's fine.
sorry,
Yep. till the
not that I'm
25th.
not supportive of it, I just want to see the financials first, and which is gonna happen yet tonight, so.
Okay. I have a motion to table by Ms. Roberts. Do we have a second on that? Need a second on that? Ask one more time.
I'll second.
Thank you very much, sir. I've got a motion and a second. We'll have discussion on that. Dave, if you want to give a brief review.
Yeah, if you'll recall, at our work session 2 weeks ago, we had talked about bringing a contract forward. Public Works went out, I believe it was back in August, September, for RFPs for this particular project. We had a council committee of 2 that consisted of Councilman Etcher and Councilman Mulder, met with Public Works Director Peterson, Street Superintendent Kaler, and myself. We talked about the different proposals. I think we kind of agreed on, we kind of supported, I believe, Matt's choice and who he kind of wanted to work with on this project. As you recall, we had talked that we had checked some references and things had came back fairly well. So at the last meeting, we directed Jeff and Matt to go ahead and get a proposal to get the project started, knowing that, Chip was going to be here this evening to kind of talk in some generalities towards the financing. And I know in 2 weeks, when we have the public hearing on the amendment to the urban renewal plan, which will allow for financing for this project, Chip will be back again as well. So that'll be kind of a full circle. So I do understand Councilwoman Roberts' decision to table this for 2 weeks to get a little more data, but
And then that allows Mulder to be here also.
yes. Greg did send an email that he was supportive of everything. Just all he really wanted from staff was kind of an update on the items from the work session that will happen later this evening. We do have a representative from Farnsworth here. I'd like to just note that Christopher Worth is here in the back. And hopefully he'll be able to come back in 2 weeks. I don't know if there's anything that anybody wants to ask him this evening while he's here, or if you just want to wait for 2 weeks and get the financials and then move forward.
Okay, I'll look to council here for questions or discussion.
No, and I don't have any concerns with what I saw in the packet. It's again, just the financials first, so.
All right. Having said that, I've got a motion and a second to table this matter until the February 25th meeting. Roll call, please, on that.
Roberts,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Item 5D this evening is an ordinance change to ordinance 540, amending the city code, chapter 65 regarding parking regulations. This is a first of 3 readings. I need a motion on this.
I'll give you a motion.
Motion by Mr. Murphy,
I can second this.
second by Mr. Rigler. Dave?
I would just, I'm not sure whether Matt or Nate want to say something. I think Nate, were you the one that came up with you may want to just come up and just talk about, why you chose, the size that you did possibly, please. Thank you.
Well, the reason why we chose the sides we did was, first of all, we chose, there would be no parking on the sides where the hydrants are. That's fairly obvious, and that's with Matt being the fire chief of Cambridge, obviously that experience came in helpful. And then with the stop signs, but essentially if you're entering into what would be like a feeder street or a longer street or a faster street, however you want to call it, then you'd have the stop sign to yield to. So that's how we came up with it. There's really not much to it. And that's it. If I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any, otherwise that's how we came up with everything. All right, thanks.
Thanks, sir. Any questions or comments from council? Hearing none, I've got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Rigler,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item 5E this evening is a motion to amend ordinance 541 regarding no parking zones, as outlined in chapter 69 of our code. This is a first of 3 potential readings. Need a motion.
I'll give you a motion.
Motion by Mr. Murphy. Second.
I'll give you a second.
Second by Ms. Roberts. There's information contained in the packet on this, of course, as well. Any additional discussion, comments? Any additional discussion or questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Murphy,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
All right, moving on. Item six this evening is department reports. Any department heads wish to make any comments this evening? Just ask that you come to the podium. Seeing a lot of heads nodding no. Miss Kathy? No? Okay. Forrest? Okay, Aaron? Okay, Barb?
Just ask that if any council members or the mayor are interested in attending the local leaders day at the Capitol on March 4th. Let me know as soon as possible and I will get you registered for that. It's a Tuesday.
Thank you, Barb. David?
I would just note a couple, our upcoming work sessions in 2 weeks. We will have a presentation on the lean comp plan. We hope to have one or two of the representatives from MSA here to talk about that. And I know Councilman Murphy had asked that we bring the discussion back up regarding rock under all city streets. So that's going to come back up for discussion in a work session in 2 weeks as well.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Murphy?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Mr. Rigler?
I'd like to propose a potential work session to discuss finishing out the library space, which I know that Kathy maybe talked to a few of us, but now that we have that, the actual room itself finished, but what it looks like to potentially furnish it in a professional manner. So maybe that's a small budget item, but if we can add it to a work session, or if you have some proposals for what you'd like to see it filled out as. Dave, did you?
I would just note that I know Kathy's provided some cost estimates to Barb, and we're working on the CIP, looking at the local option tax dollars that we've taken in last year and this current year. And that is one of the items that we will be bringing forward for council consideration.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rigler. Mr. Etcher?
None.
Ms. Roberts?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Just one item from my chair this evening. I want to thank staff, David and Barb, for the setup we've got here now with the TVs, kind of this rearranged setup we've got. Hopefully that makes it more conducive for the public to come and see us in person, but if not, certainly to watch us on YouTube. So appreciate your efforts to see that through. So that will conclude our regular business for this evening. We do have a work session with 3 items this evening. We will go ahead and move into that. Item 7A this evening is a discussion with the, is it Herons or Huron? Herons. If you could please introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, so my wife, Colleen, Jeff Heron.
Yeah, there's.
I'm sorry, you may need to turn the microphone back on. It doesn't stay on.
I wish it did. I apologize. There's. Yeah,
Is that better?
appreciate
Jeez.
it. Thanks, sir.
It's pretty slick though. I agree with your comment. It's a nice layout. First of all, yeah, thanks for putting us on the agenda. It's been a long journey for us on this topic. So I think this is a good opportunity to share it with you and hopefully align on a path forward. My wife Colleen and I own the property at 1,000 Ballard Drive, which for those of you that have been out, I think you know is between Centennial and Ballard, kind of right on the corner there. It's 4 acres. And the background is we bought the property in 2000. We started occupying it in August of 2021 after building a home there. So it took 1.5 years to get the home figured out. And when we bought the property, as we did our abstract search, we discovered that the city of Huxley had an easement to the back 60 feet of our property. And this is the east side of the property. And that easement was for utilities, I think running from the church out to the golf course underneath the easement area. And the easement was pretty conventional in that it, required the city to have access to the last 60 feet. And the city had the obligation to, recover any of the land that was disturbed during the maintenance work and whatnot. So that's all, I think, on the up and up and no concerns about that. That was discovered during the process when we purchased the home. And as we purchased the home, one of the visions of the property was to turn it into a native prairie, except for where we lived. And so that back easement part, in fact, spells out very clearly that that's possible. Because it says in the easement that you can have ground cover, you just can't have obstruction. We at the time, when we purchased the land, started working with the city
to gain a fence permit, and our intention is still to grass in that easement area with prairie grass to fit into the neighboring ecosystem, I would say. And just about by the maybe it's the battery. Or I can just talk. Okay. So then about the time we got the fence permit from the city and we're getting ready to run the project. Okay, is that okay? Technology. Yeah. And so this was dating back, I think, to the 22 timeframe when we were getting ready to run the project. We stopped the project to kind of sort this out. And, you know, very simply, what I was asking the bakers at the time is if you have an easement, just show it to me so I can understand the rules of engagement with how we're going to do this property. And through the course of a good 6 to 12 months of discovery and trying to sort out where that easement was, we could not find one. The bakers could not find one. And so they thought they had an easement they don't have. And so their next course of action was to approach the city council and say, hey, you owe us an easement for this property for some reason. And for some reason, still unbeknownst to us, the city council granted the extension of the city easement to them without any transparency to any of the landowners around there. So that was back in 23, late 23, let's say. So long story short is our project with building out that piece of our property is still on hold. And what we've discovered and what I haven't said yet is, and maybe you saw this in the pre-read, that the easement area also contains gravel. And so it is perceived by the citizens of Huxley as a Huxley City road. And it's a convenience road that allows you to pass from Centennial to North Fifth on the other side. And so it gets used every day by delivery drivers, by golf carts, by children walking to the church and back, as if it was a city road. So kind of aside from the baker's easement, which is one of our issues, the other issue is we got high traffic across the back end of our property, which for me is a problem. It's a problem also from a liability perspective because that property has a retention basin of water, a pond, right next to that road, and there's no barriers, and there's a downward facing slope. So if there was to be any accidents on that road, there's a whole lot of questions around who holds that liability for that to happen. So that's the background. And maybe before I jump into the problems I see and what proposed solutions I might offer, are there any questions on how we got to where we are? Crystal clear? Okay. Okay, super. So then, yeah, the problems that I mentioned, the frequency of access to the private land by maybe largely unknowing citizens because it looks like a road. It's a pass through to a place everybody wants to go, and so they use it. That's problem one. And I mentioned the liability with the ponds, problem two. The issue of the city easement transferred to a private citizen without any acknowledgement of the city landowners is problem three. So that's history. And then problem four is it looks like from once our attorney dug up the easement that the city transferred to the bakers, it appears in the language that the bakers also have rights to transfer that further unfiltered. And there's no checks and balances that even any citizen can have rights to that property, which just magnifies this issue. So the reason we're here is this has been a long process trying to sort out how to get alignment with a plan forward. And I would offer three solutions that solve the problems that we're trying to solve here. And the first one is the access. So random citizens, delivery drivers, whoever wants to sees that as a public road. Problem or solution one is still the same solution we had 3 years ago, which we would like to put an access gate on the north side of that easement space, locked with a chain and lock, so that citizens won't access that easement. And of course, the city has a need for it. And so at the same time, we would issue the Public Works a key to that lot when you need it for the easement rights that you still hold as a city. And I think that's accomplishing the goal for the city. It's accomplishing our main issue, which is the heavy traffic that happens on that road. Additionally to that, we will also take the action because the easements already spell this out to grass in that area. So that gravel will be removed anyway, which of course will also limit interest in passing through there. And that's granted in the easement that already exists. And then the third part is we request that the city take a resolution to revoke that easement that you passed on to the Bakers 2 years ago, whenever this was, for many reasons, not the least of which was the lack of transparency in the process. So those were the three issues and the three solutions that I wanted to bring tonight, and certainly welcome any comments from the council here or any questions to those.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your comments this evening. Maybe I'll look to Dave for any initial comments, or Aaron maybe.
Well, I'll turn over to Aaron here in a minute. I did provide you with a copy of the plans that were put in place back in 2011. Randy Schaefer, who owned the property that the Bakers currently own, had a gravel drive that came out to Highway 69. In order to put in West Centennial, they needed to kind of swap some properties with Mr. Schaefer, whether it was the city or Dixon. And I think, Jeff, it was Dixon that he worked with on that. And on this, you'll see that when they poured the curb and gutter in the street for the first phase of West Centennial that went up and tied into Ballard, there is a 46 square foot concrete approach along with the curb cut that was put in. It was not a curb cut. It was actually machined in as they poured that street like any other driveway. And it had the access, and Randy made that choice to work with Dixon, but he needed an access to his property at that time. Jeff, I think there was just a temporary that went to Fifth at that time that was.
Without Randy doing this, it wouldn't have happened. He didn't have a driveway. So in doing that, they put a temporary driveway in front of his house, and it's a run plan that the contractor could maintain that temporary driveway and put it in there, coming off of the Fifth, because Fifth had to come off of the Fifth. He says, you can't have an intersection here with Fifth coming out, it's too dangerous. So Randy lost his driveway. To do that, he worked with the city and everybody, Dixon, get the development going. That the driveway off of that intersection, Highway 69. They put in the construction set to have it coming on Dixon's property that was just off what Randy had from the back that we owned there. And then they had access and put it all at the same time. So once that was done, then the temporary would have to keep up the temporary driveway come off the Fifth, because the Fifth was really dead. We really went dead in that clear back to the, well, practically where Flight is now. But we couldn't do that because the church was in the county at the time. They already got permission from the county to build there, but we had the access off the Highway 2, so we left that little stuff out there. Otherwise, that was gonna come all back. We don't have any pain, that doesn't do us any good. So eventually the church has got some more property, got kind of an outlet that comes off the Ballard, that someday when they develop their back west property, they can use a driveway off that and get off the Fifth. So it's all for Randy. If Randy wouldn't have got the driveway, he wouldn't have done it. We would never had it West Centennial. None of this would happen. And that was how he got Randy. Randy didn't want to budget first. He goes, well, I need a driveway. Because my driveway is right there. And then you look at the construction set, it all shows, it's all on there. We have to do. And the contractor signed it, did all of Westview. They're all Centennial Lake all the time. We call it Centennial West. He didn't put that through that temporary and just get him in on Fifth, because you can't get fire trucks down that road. It's not going to get a fire truck down. If that getting fired, it had to be emergency deliveries, all this stuff. If he lost that stuff.
And Jeff, I think you had mentioned too, that I think as part of that trade, some of those first lots, that 53, 52, 51, those were actually given to Randy. And Randy actually, as part of that trade for what he gave up, he was able to sell those lots and recoup some costs back. And I will defer to Erin if she has any comments after council has any questions.
But yeah, before I turn it over to council, is there anybody else from the public that wishes to be heard on this topic this evening? Want to make sure everybody has an opportunity. Okay. Seeing no one rise. Oh, I'm sorry, please. Yep, if you could approach the podium and start with your name.
The other side of the problem. So we moved in and Travis Baker, sorry, 1011 Highway 69. So, this is my wife, Amy. 2017. So when we moved in, we thought we did our due diligence on it and we checked on the easement. We've had easement problems before and we checked and, you know, our lawyer said, nope, you're good to go. Nothing will change. It's city easement. It's not going anywhere. We did some research. And we found out exactly that's what I was going to go up and say is what, you know, we found out from Randy and everything before that they had to move that driveway and that's the access. So yeah, the reason before, I think when we came in, we originally, you know, they wanted to take it over was we didn't really know what we were going to do because that's where we actually get our delivery. The kids get on the bus. So if we got cut off from that, I don't know how we would get everything else, you know, the rest of the property. I mean, it's basically part of the property. But I'm, like I said, I think we talked before, I'm willing to work with them to try to, you know, clean it up or do whatever we can, but it's not our property. So I can't do anything to clean it up. Or change the gravel or anything. I think we offered to pave it at one time, buy it, whatever we need to do, but that's kind of it. But yeah, I mean, everything Jeff just mentioned is exactly how we remember it from Randy when we bought it. It's always going to be a driveway. And then I think at one time we even asked the city in 2017 and they said you have to have an egress and ingress to that property. You have to have an in and out so that you'll always have an in and out to that property. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Traffic. I think the traffic's cut down a little.
I know, picking up with the buildings that are coming out from the north, we're seeing a lot more kids and groups of kids coming over to middle school.
Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely right. For a while there, when we first moved in, it was a highway. I mean, it was like people were just, but I mean, it seems like it's slowed down a lot. We don't have.
It has slowed down a lot. I would say for the most part, Amy Baker, I would say for the most part, it is likely our children and their friends and our company using that as our access.
Yeah, I'd like to think so.
The kids are gonna take a shorter path, whether we have a prairie grass or whether we have a gravel road. The kids walking is not an issue here as far as I'm concerned.
I was gonna say my only comment, and I've been here forever, and I remember because Randy built a house that was their only driveway, and I think I went out and walked your property with you,
Yep.
Jeff, and said that, you know, this was always Shaper's driveway to get in and out of there. The little access that they had in front used to be for a tree farm, so I think you guys just prettied that up and made it nice and looks good, but I think it's always been the intention for where the driveway's at now to be the driveway. I do see your concern with the traffic going there. I'm wondering, you know, if there maybe needs to be some more upfront private drive kind of thing to slow that down. But I just wanted to give the history that, yeah, everything Jeff said, that's how I remember as well.
Mr. Baker, just for my own clarification, you've got a driveway that goes south to the Grace Church as well. Is that correct? Or the Grace Church?
Yes.
Drive in?
Yep.
Okay, okay. Just wanted.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, the trees are kind of tight in there and everything, but I mean, just the access of where they pick up the trash and everything, we have to go down out the front. They, you know, and the school bus goes to the other side.
By the city. Look at the construction.
Yeah.
That was actually put in by the city. There's a path you can drive with the trees, but the city had put gravel on that. Until the gravel was done.
And we do have
Look at the
private.
construction set and everything, it talks about all that. Yeah, we had to put it in and keep it very involved. Then that later.
I know this is way off topic, but I know we're working with Forest here on that, finishing that trail, and we're gonna replot. I don't know if we're replotting anything, but I mean, if they're interested in just selling that little piece, then we could just take care of the whole thing too, and then replot it.
Thanks, sir.
So my thinking on this is we voted on this back in 23 and I was one that was in favor of this. We had the history because I grew up here also, just like Tracy. And I know the previous owner, and I know what he did to get all this going. And like what Jeff was saying, and it is an easement, and we did grant him that. That's why I don't know why this is coming back up at this time. It was a legal granting of the easement. Our attorney looked through it, approved it. And that's where we're at. We can't go back on what we granted him and allowed him to have access which he had previously, but we just gave him the legal granting of that.
Yeah. But you can understand our concern.
Yeah, I can understand
We
your concerns,
purchased the land,
but you,
there's no easement.
but what you're also saying is the deliveries are to his residence. The kids walking back and forth are gonna walk that trail anyway.
No, they don't have to.
Well, even if you put up a fence, those kids are gonna walk past that fence.
Delivery trucks and people going to the church. And it's people.
Yeah, it's an easement, man.
And so people walk their dogs and ride their bikes, so I think it's so much greater
Yeah.
type of citizen of Huxley using it.
I'm just, we talked about this in 23. It was discussed and I don't know why it's coming back up. That's my thinking on it.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
One thing
go ahead.
about people, our bike trails coming in here within the next year and a half, so hopefully the kids using and things like that are gonna change once we get that connector 69. So that's the whole reason we applied for the grants. We got the money to get that connector, so all this extra volume of traffic on bikes and kids and things like that, because otherwise there probably isn't no way to get to like it's safe unless you walk along the edge of the highway. And we recognize that, we knew that for the last several years that we put that far up the trail plan together. Get those kids to the places they want to be, the fairway, like the ice cream shop. So I think you're gonna see a lot of that go away. If they're still using that, I think like maybe putting private drive signs up might help, private drive, that might help to get some of the traffic, but I really think as far as the kids using that besides the kids that play with them, maybe kids that's different, that's their active. But yeah, I think that's gonna probably change for kids. It's just going trying to get to fairway or going to get some popcorn or ice cream, whatever, so.
Yeah, I guess, and maybe this is a question for Aaron. I tried to look up kind of what precedent was set in Iowa for transferring from the city to a private resident. And the only time I could find is if it was landlocked, which is maybe what the Schaefer access point did. But when that private entryway on the south end of the Bakers was created by the city, that was created prior to the easement being granted. I guess, yeah, just looking through, I'm definitely not a lawyer. That's why I'm referring to someone who's more of an expert. My concern was that maybe we as a council we weren't supposed to have extended that easement. And I couldn't find a precedent in Iowa where they had. I'd seen it going to other cities or communities, but never to a private resident unless they were entirely landlocked. And I guess I'd just like to know the answer to that before I
I don't know that there's a breadth of case law in our court systems that interprets the analysis of that. I can tell you from experience that does happen. And looking at the language of the original lease, it talks about it being a public easement. It talks about ingress and egress. And I'm hearing the history, obviously I wasn't here at the time, but I'm hearing the history of the use and why it was originally designed. And it definitely sounds like it was designed to be a public access for individuals to that property. So I had a couple of notes that I wanted to share just about, I think in the write-up that you had prepared, which thank you for doing that. That gave me a lot of opportunity to have some background information. There wasn't anything illegal about what the city did. So when the city did that transfer, there was nothing illegal about that. I know there was a question about 364.7 about transferring and disposing of city property. The city didn't dispose of anything. The city kept their interest in that easement. So there wasn't the requirement to do a public hearing and go through that process. So in reviewing what we have in front of us today, I don't see any issue with what happened in 2023 and the partial assignment of that easement.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? On the liability, who holds liability for this? And let's say there's a wreck on that easement. Who's liable for the damages, or who's liable if something happens? Is it the property owner in the easement? People, property owner, easement city? I mean, who ultimately is responsible if damages occur or something happens?
So it depends on the purpose of the person being there, right? So if it's a city worker and you're working on utilities that are gonna be underground, you're gonna have liability for things that might happen. So if you're opening up the ground and opening up that easement space, the city is gonna have responsibility. There is some liability for the property owner, so as the landowner on which the easement sits.
I just take issue with that. If somebody put additional liability on my property and expected me to cover it, I would take a little bit of issue to that. I mean, yeah, please.
No one put the responsibility on them. They took it when they bought the property with an easement on. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, but the easement wasn't filed at the time that they got
The easement was already there when they bought the property.
Easement to the
The
city.
big easement was, but the
The
easement
liability
give,
produced it.
the additional easement to give it to private citizens to travel across that, so the risk skyrocketed. I have no problem with a utility easement, and if the utility company causes the problem, I understand the risk going back to utility company, that's simple.
So,
But now we're opening it up to anybody that wants to drive across it, which opens that risk pool much
But
higher.
when you buy property with an easement, you're gonna get charged for that insurance, property insurance, and with the easement, regardless whether it's assigned to me or not. And that, so, because that's, I've checked with the insurance on the same problem. So that it's not gonna make their insurance shoot up or anything else. If there's an accident, their homeowner insurance covers.
so like our attorney just advised, it'd be the situation of the accident. If he was involved in an accident at that point of our easement, then he would probably be the one
Yep.
responsible.
And the majority of the citizens that pass through there aren't easement holders.
But yeah,
They're random citizens who use the space without an easement.
we
Trespass.
don't know that, sir.
Oh, but we do.
Okay.
We see this happen.
Do you take information from everybody that goes through there?
Yep. Not quite to the detail you're
Okay.
thinking, but
Okay,
we
that's what I
monitor it
thought.
very closely, of course.
We were told to call the police each time someone came through, and we're like, we don't want it. That's not good use of city funds to call police departments out every time someone's walking their dog, riding their bike. So I think the 3 years that we've monitored this, the variety of types of citizens that have come through, and certainly the frequency as the temperatures warm up gets much greater. So the value in going out and policing and writing down names of people and phone numbers and calling the police, it just seems a little bit too much for the purpose of what that is.
Can I ask this from our attorney? So this is basically like what they're saying is people walking down that or so forth. Is it basically from the sidewalk to the curb? Anybody walking in that area on a private property is the same thing?
That's right.
That's the right of way, yes, but it's also it's the same thing.
We have some brand new litigation actually on that
Yeah,
topic.
yes.
Sidewalks in particular. And I don't know if our court system would extend that to this type of situation. But we do know that it's historically always been whoever owns that sidewalk, or if they're gonna extend it, we don't know, to this easement area. It's the property owner's responsibility to make sure that it's maintained in a fashion that there isn't injury that's going to occur there. That liability through the recent Bankers Trust case law has now transferred some of that liability to the city. And so I would expect a similar result in a case like this.
So the liability goes back to the city then, is what we're looking at.
Assuming that there isn't, we don't know, right? We don't know, but I'm just following the logic of that case law that was recently enacted this summer. That, similar arguments would be made. I think the exception is always going to be if you're putting intentional hurdles in that space that might cause an injury, that weren't naturally there.
Peterson. So, talking about easements, our whole bike trail system is on easements. Going along the north side of town, or the south side of town, we don't own the property, those bike trails are on easement. On every one of those properties that back up through bike. All our park, the exit parks between houses are on easements, the sidewalks to get people out there into these parks are on easements too, so. Those people's sidewalks, knowing those easements are there, the city doesn't own that portion, we just have easement for the sidewalk through there. And bike paths through there. Every one of those properties that you're doing the hard to bike trail are all on easement. And it's all city people that we don't even know they're using these easements that are coming out of town.
But I don't think an easement's an issue if Dixon Jensen would have filed an easement at the time this agreement was done. It would have been a non-issue because it would have been filed. I think the issue is that it was assumed it was there, but we didn't have a filing until the city took action in 2023, at which time Dixon no longer owned the ground. It was a different property owner. So while I do understand what's going on, I do understand the intent, but that is also why we do have a process of filing things in a timely manner to keep from these kind of things happening. But when you do a title search and there's no easement in your title search, then that is exactly it, that there's no easement. I don't care if there's a handshake agreement, that's not a legal easement if it's not filed at the time. For the city to have easements for the utilities, not for the private citizen aspect of it.
That's
Things that are legal, non-filed easements, though. I mean, we've heard of adverse possession and prescriptive easements. I mean, that's not an argument for the city to make. You have a valid easement that's in
Yeah.
place there, but,
I'd agree with that.
but those types of arguments would apply in a case like this when you've got a roadway that's been there since 2011.
So maybe what we can do as a city is figure out the liability aspect. I mean, I don't feel right putting the liability aspect back on the Herons as a property owner if they have no control of what's gonna go on there.
And it's also on the Polworks and the Martinsons.
Yeah.
That easement is 3 families.
3 neighboring families.
I wonder, I don't even know how relevant this is, but back on Oak Boulevard, when we have that sidewalk where Lukens, I own this how old I am, when Lukens lived in the house. And then there's the sidewalk that runs along across the apartments, and there's a big drop off. If we had the property owners, they put a fence along there to protect themselves. And I'm wondering if this is the same, I don't know. Like, it's the same, right? The sidewalk was there, the city, we put the new sidewalk in. Am I making sense? Am I the only one that remembers this?
I know what you're talking about. I know it.
We own the property all the way up to the pond on the south side, and anyone that accesses the church has to go over our property. Yeah, so, I mean, if we start going down this road, do we start now fencing that off in the church, we start taking numbers, or we're coming to church every Sunday, or, I mean, that's where it's gonna head.
If I could just, John, react to your comment, that's exactly our issue. Is that we had assumed that there were some historical reasons why people thought they had an easement to that. Because we couldn't make sense of why the council would pass an easement to a private citizen. But it shouldn't matter. We bought the property in 2020 with the full legal review of the situation. And there's nothing that told us as a buyer of a property in Huxley that this handshake was done 10 years ago. So I don't like the fact that that liability comes to me now. Not only like the legal liability of danger, but the fact that now it's forced on us as an owner of a property of a decision that was taken 10 years prior and unfortunately wasn't filed. So how can you clean that up? And at worst, how can you clean it up without any conversation with the property owners? I still can't understand that. So it's not debating the history. The history is the history, but.
This was given to council. Yeah, I'm not saying for access to Schaefer property.
I mean, it kind of sounds like Travis is willing to purchase the property and take that liability risk. Basically, Well, no, that would be between the two property
Yeah.
owners, but I'm saying,
Well,
you know,
3, 4.
yeah, I mean, Travis has
Yeah.
basically, offered that.
I guess another question or something that throws me, just reviewing everything that we have here is, and maybe you guys have the historical context, John and I weren't privy to it at the time, but it looks like they bought it in 20. They filed the fence permit in 21. At least from what I've gathered, it sounds like doing the neighborly thing. They didn't put a fence across the easement between them and the city because their neighbor had expressed that they had an easement. It wasn't granted until 2 years later to the Bakers. If putting myself in their shoes, I would be very frustrated if that was the situation that I got put into. Whereas if you purchase the property and it was already extended to your neighbor, I'd feel different.
Yep.
Knowing that it was granted to the city, knowing that we approved a fence permit. I mean, they could have been that neighbor that put up a fence and then it would have been, a neighbor squabble instead of a city thing. I don't know. That to me, without the other portion of the paper trail, just feels wrong, but.
Any other comments from council members? So it's certainly been a good discussion. I have not heard a consensus amongst council members to revoke this easement in any way. It's certainly, I can appreciate both sides of this issue and this conversation, but I'm not hearing any consensus amongst council members. So unless I receive that direction, and you can certainly give me that direction in the future, that you want to revisit this as an agenda item, we'll move on to our next work session item. But do appreciate your comments this evening and would certainly encourage you to continue to engage with your elected officials. So thanks, sir.
Dave, would now be an appropriate time, at least to get it on the agenda for discussion? I realize Greg's not here as well, but I'd be happy to put it forth as a motion to add it to an agenda or a future agenda, because it sounds like there might be historical context. So if we could find that documentation, I think it would definitely inform my opinion on it differently if there was additional documentation for the Schaefer access.
Sure. So let me do this. Let me ask staff to continue to look or research for that additional documentation, and that might help some council members.
I think additional information would be welcome on my part.
Okay, great. Well, we'll get that from staff, and then again, if we get enough council members, we get a consensus that want it to come forward for an agenda item, we will proceed accordingly. Moving on this evening, item 7B is discussion regarding 560th Avenue and the potential paving thereof. David?
As you recall, I think we had gone before Story County Board of Supervisors prior to our last meeting. There really didn't seem to be a lot of support. I know Councilman Mulder had another idea. He's not here to really talk about it, but I will tell you that we've got some things that are moving very fast right now, that there's a potential for some annexation into the city down along 560th for a project. We should know very soon. And if that is the case, the folks at the Alliance feel very favorable that we would be able to obtain some RISE funds from the state of Iowa to pave a good portion of 560th. So rather than I really can't get into all the details of that tonight, but we're hoping within the next 2 weeks, we'll have some resolution of that. And if that doesn't pan out, then we'll go back to look at what Mr. Mulder had looked at.
I would suggest that we do a
Transfer of jurisdiction.
My aspect is we do a two-prong approach and move forward with the transfer of annexation or transfer of jurisdiction along with the annexation and do a two-prong approach. My fear is if we put all our eggs in one basket and something doesn't come to fruition, citizens of Huxley are going to be holding the bag and we're going to be in a bad situation.
Those are two options, basically.
Yeah, so we've got two options on the table. I would strongly encourage that we exercise both options at the same point or follow both options until we make sure that we've got a viable one going forward.
We can certainly continue to look at that.
The request for a transfer of jurisdiction, are you looking to go the full mile to the south there with that? I assume it's gravel for about a mile, right?
But it is gravel for a mile, and I believe that after we had left Story County Supervisor meeting, Greg kind of thought of that on the way back and had called Rory and I to pop that idea in our head to think about. So I think his intent was to really look at that full mile, so.
All right. Any other comments on this topic at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7C this evening, which is a discussion with Chip Schultz.
All right, evening, folks. Chip Schultz with Northland Public Finance. So this is material that provides basically an introduction to some background, no concrete plans at all, but just some introductory type material for the public works facility financing. What is contemplated is paying the debt back over a 5-year period of time. And what I think what I'm, that's, so you've got planned for your February, I think it's 25th council meeting. You've got action on a proposed urban renewal plan amendment. What that will do is gives you authority to proceed with financing, whether you proceed with, on page 2, either general obligation financing or urban renewal TIF revenue financing. So on page 2, I highlight a couple of the distinctions between the two. General obligation financing has the benefit of being payable from two different payment sources, both TIF revenues and assuming a static or stable $3.58 city debt service levy. The rate on a general obligation bond issue, assuming a roughly 5-year payment structure, will be right about of a range of about 3% in the current market. So with TIF revenue, it's in the range of 3.5% or so in the current market. A key distinction from a legal standpoint, the TIF revenue bonds are not subject to a reverse referendum. So a member of the public cannot file a petition to take the project to a public vote, assuming there's council support for passing the urban renewal plan amendment. The general obligation debt is subject to reverse referendum, so that's a risk to consider. And I think after you have the urban renewal plan public hearing on February 25th, and we're proposing dual financing public hearings on March 11th, you'll know at that point in time on March 11th if someone files a petition. If not, you have a full green light to go forward with the general obligation financing, and it has a benefit of being the lowest cost financing and having 2 payment sources. So that's some background, just kind of a framework for what we're looking at. The page numbers at the bottom center of each page. So page 3 of 9, that's just historic or existing general obligation debt that's payable from both what's more in the more distant past, some might recall a $3.75 debt levy. That's dropped to the benefit of citizens to $3.58 for the past couple of years, including proposed for FY 25-26. This is GO debt paid from both your TIF revenues and your $3.58 debt levy. That historically, in the left 4 years, starting with fiscal year 2021 through fiscal year 23-24, was far higher than what it is for the current year. That was more in the range of $2.7 to $2.8 million. It's closer to $2 million for the current year, fiscal year 24-25. What's meaningful is when you look at the next 7 years on the graph, how the debt service drops off and your final debt service payment on existing general obligation debts payable in fiscal year 31-32. The city's really paid off a lot of debt over the past, let's say, broadly speaking, 20 years. The next page highlights general obligation debt payable from your TIF revenues only. Again, historically, it's been higher, some years close to and just under $2 million. What's in place for, and it's assumed to be used for the Public Works facility, what's in place for fiscal year 25-26 is right about at the green horizontal line, having the TIF debt be certified at 1.5 million for fiscal year 25-26. Again, really meaningful payments, revenue sources are available from TIF as you look out going forward. On the following page, this is detail broken out on general obligation debt for fiscal year 25-26. And it's broken out by bond issue. Your oldest debt issue was the 2019 debt for the Southeast Water and Sewer Project. The 2020 debt was the 560th trail improvements in East First. The 2022 debt funded a portion of the water plant and refunded your 2016 debt. So what's broken out in column F is the total principal and interest payment. Column G is the assumed abatement of the debt from TIF revenues, broken out by bond issue. And then the gray shaded, darker gray, column I, is the net amount that's assumed to be paid from a debt service levy. And Barb and I checked numbers back and forth on the amount for fiscal year 25-26. We tie out to the $1,057,000. That equates to the $3.58 debt levy at the bottom right of the page.
I'd just like to add to that, that $3.58 debt levy would allow the city to be able to do its consolidated levy at the same rate as last year. There'd be no increase.
So there's
in
no
the-
increase in levy whatsoever.
There's no increase in levy over fiscal year 25.
Even including the project, for
Just
sure.
wanted to verify that.
You bet. But very, very important and very key for citizens to know. The following page, page 6, is, I think it's really, this has a little bit more history and I think it's pretty remarkable. Starts out with fiscal year 2017-18. The fiscal years are at the left side. So your 100% or actual valuation in column D, that's akin to your assessed valuation from the county assessor. That's before rollback is applied. Once rollback is applied, you have your taxable valuation, taxable valuations to which your debt levy is applied and operating levy. So if you look at fiscal year 17-18, the city's legal debt limit at that point in time, in the first row, was about $12.6 million. Skip down to fiscal year 25-26, the darker gray shaded row. For the upcoming fiscal year, the city's legal debt limit, which is 5% of your actual or 100% valuation, is now $28,157,793. More than doubled compared to fiscal year 2017-18. You see a much more meaningful impact in the legal debt capacity expanding. You're obviously a very residential heavy city. The residential properties are rolled back to roughly 47% for fiscal year 25-26. There's no rollback applied to this valuation for your legal debt capacity. So that's why the city really stands out in this regard. If you look at column T, the third row, which is fiscal year 19-20, when the 560th Heart of Iowa Trail and East First Street debt was in place, the city at that point in time was about at 82% of your debt limit. Skip down 2 rows in column T to fiscal year 21-22, when the Geo water plant debt was issued, city was about at 79.2% of your legal debt limit. If you skip down further, 4 more rows to the gray shaded row, including the proposed debt for the Public Works facility, you'd be at about 48% of your legal debt limit. And I'm just assuming an amount here. I assumed $5,150,000. It might be less than that. But even with that included, you're still less than 50% of your legal debt limit. Just kind of has a nice ring to it. What's listed on the following pages this is basically just detailing your existing debt. The final 3 pages breaks out your 2017 debt that's paid off after the June 1 of 2025 payments made. You called in the 2026 maturity early. On the right side of the page is the 2019 debt for the Southeast Water and Sewer work. The page after that is the 2020 debt to the left. That's your existing debt for the 560th Avenue project, Heart of Iowa Trail, East First Street. And the purpose are listed out there. To the right, that's the 2022 debt for that refunded the 2016 general obligation debt and funded a portion of the water plant. What's really remarkable, that original issue, that's your most recent bond issue from 2022, was at the bottom right of the page, 6.9 million. After you make the June 1 payment this year, the outstanding principal will be 3.9 million. You will have already paid off 3 million of that debt just issued in 2022. So really rapidly amortizing and paying debt off. So it's very cost effective for the city. What we're proposing is a 5-year payment structure for the public works facility. That'll ideally we'll have both a city debt service levy no higher than 358, and I'll also be able to leverage TIF revenues. And it really depends what citizens have to say at the March 11th public hearing date on the financing, and what their feedback is at that point. So.
And I want to thank Chip, because I worked with Chip a lot when I was in Nevada, and a lot of our debt was 5 or 7 years.
Rapid payback.
Rapid
Great.
payback. I don't want to pay interest any longer than I absolutely have to. So thank you for getting that.
You bet. So if you compare this just hypothetically, if the debt was structured over 10 years, you're saving on a 5-year structure with current rates about $450,000. If you structure the public works facility debt over 15 years, you're saving just under $1 million in interest costs without without raising taxes. So. I was told to keep it brief, so that's where we're at. And there's a lot more detail to come, I think. So if you have kind of a sense what you'd like me to assume for more detailed numbers for a project cost, I'd welcome that feedback. I know it's just an estimate at this point, but I want to be on the same page with kind of what you're expecting, what you're looking for.
Matt, do you have a dollar amount? I think last week, rough toss at it, I think it was like 4.6. Knowing that Calhoun County, they budgeted for, I think it was 5 something, and they came in at like 2.5 or 3. So the market right now, people are looking for work and all that. I think going out to bid would be a lot cheaper, I think.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah, Chip was at 5 or a little over 5. So
quite a cushion, I mean, pretty good cushion built in, 10%.
Stick with 5.1 for a general.
I like the 5.1 as a general, because for me, I personally plan high and hope low. I mean, I like to be worst case scenario type looking at it.
I think you're looking at a July 1st bid date for construction bids approximately. I think, so with that in mind, I think similar to what we'd worked through on the water plant project, nice to have the bids in hand before at least all the financing pieces are come together with that in mind. So you do have the option if you want to issue the debt now, or you can wait for the bids, but certainly ideally best to wait for bids, I think. General for now. I'll be back in a few weeks with more details. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chip, and if you want to stick around, we'll send you that signed contract back for the
Okay.
wastewater.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So on that, I look to have a draft of that prepared this month, and I'll work with Dave and Barb on that, and Amy as well. So look for that to be maybe come to council in March sometime. We're gonna get moving on that, so it's wrapped up and in front of you. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you as always, Chip. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. A motion by Ms. Roberts and a second by Mr. Etcher. All those in favor, please respond with aye. All those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you very much. Our next meeting is February 25th at 6 PM. Thank you very much.
Do you have one extra one of these? I do for our missing council member. Thank you. Thanks. And there's even others. No, not that great, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is good information.
Glad to do it.
Well, and to me, the earlier we can get a project done, the quicker we're gonna have revenue freed up to do something else. And we gotta just be on this continuum.
You can see the rest of our debt dropping, so we will always be looking ahead as stuff. So we're always gonna have some.
Thank you. Well, and as far as I'm concerned, we've got a lot of building that we need to redo infrastructure around this town and the fact. Yeah, and the faster we can get some of this stuff off going, the better off getting us on a cycle is, and I don't mind having a cycle. I mean, shit, debt is healthy if it's done right. I don't want debt just to have debt, but if we're making the place better, I don't mind it. Yeah.
Unless you've got a massive. If you're, I mean, yeah, most of my stuff was 5 to 7 years.
You're talking to a guy that bought a brand new top dollar motorcycle on a 6-year note or a 6-month note.
I think my water plant was 8 million, we did in 10 years.
So I'm with you 100% on that.
That's exciting.
I go back to this easement thing, and I understand we got a legal right, but there's a difference between having a legal right and what's right. I mean, you guys, the city's got an easement to everybody's property.
But I look at it too, you know.
And I'll be goddamn mad if you start turning